We've met with all of the various different coloured parties that are likely to form the next government, and have had discussions with them about this very thing. And I think I can promise you the day that Mr. Miliband mentioned the words rent control was the day we took our first forward funding asset to investment committee. So thank you, Mr. Miliband. It was very clear that that policy hadn't been given a great deal of detail. And for those of you who aren't aware of it, they effectively were saying that they will have rent regulation in line with some form of index, which they mentioned at the time the RSS were going to produce, at which point the RICS put a press statement out denying it, saying they weren't going to do it. And it was going to be a mark-to-market over a 3-year period. So at the end of 3 years, you'd mark-to-market and off you go again. So we've modelled it, we've looked at what it does to the performance of the property, and it has a limited impact. So it has an impact, but it's limited. I think my concern would be more to do with the perception from an investor's perspective that that could be the thin end of the wedge, and that actually we might get a different type of regulation that would be introduced thereafter. But you can't have institutional residential in the UK on UK's current pricing methodology and have rent regulation, because our initial yields are too low. Whereas if you look at the European markets, and I think this ties in with the bond element of it, if you look at the European markets and you see where the component returns are for residential, it is a high net initial yield in comparison to the UK and a limited amount of rental growth. If you look at the UK, you've got lower initial yields and then you have higher levels of either capital growth or rental growth itself. So to then regulate a low net initial yield market, you're then going to have to reprice land, and that is not going to be a popular thing to do. So whilst I think the existing political parties are posturing around each other less than 100 days away from an election, I think the collective view is that institutions need to come into the sector. We have got a housing shortage, and one way to boost it is to have them there. So I have concerns about it. It's not a red light. It's green to amber is probably the real truth of it. It is on our watch list, but it's been made very clear to all the political parties from various lobby groups that we lead into to say this is not something that is going to work very well if you want to increase supply.